"Put down the tongs and step away from the grill, sir," the officer yelled, his hand resting on his holster. I blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" I asked, still holding the burger I was flipping. 6 patrol cars had surrounded my backyard. Red and blue lights flashed across the Texas evening sky. Helicopters buzzed above like flies over honey. Kids at the party were frozen mid-bite. Adults clutching their drinks, jaws dropped. Smoke from the sizzling ribs drifted up like a signal fire calling for chaos. "You are in violation of HOA Code 47-3B. No open flames or public gatherings on non-approved lots," a woman screeched. And there she was, Karen, the HOA president, standing behind the police line with a walkie-talkie in one hand and a camera in the other, her bright pink suit practically glowing in the setting sun. I stared at her in disbelief. "Ma'am, this is my private property. It's a 20-acre ranch. We're celebrating my son coming home from the Marines." The crowd gasped. Karen's eye twitched. One of the cops hesitated. But then Karen shouted, "Arrest him." Everyone went quiet. And that's when something happened that changed everything. 3 months earlier, things were quiet, peaceful. I had just moved back to my late grandfather's ranch in a small town outside Austin. I inherited it after he passed. A sprawling 20-acre spread with rolling fields, horses, and a big white farmhouse with creaky floors and the smell of old pine. I had served 12 years in the military. Coming home was supposed to be my fresh start. I was finally ready to settle down, raise my kids, and live a quiet life growing crops, teaching my boys about hard work, and maybe, just maybe, enjoying the smell of barbecue on Sundays. But nobody warned me about the HOA. See, a few years ago, some developer had convinced half the ranchers around here to join a fancy new homeowners association. Promised better roads, security, and property value. Sounded good on paper. But what they really got was Karen. Karen was the queen of the HOA. She had rules for everything. No more than 3 lawn gnomes, no chickens, no outdoor laundry lines, and absolutely no parties without her written permission. At first, I didn't think it applied to me. My land was passed down through generations. We never signed anything. But Karen didn't care. She said I had inherited responsibilities. I said she had lost her mind. Our war started over a mailbox. The one I built by hand. Wooden, carved with my family's name, and topped with a tiny metal eagle. One day I found it smashed. A notice was taped to the splinters. HOA violation. Mailbox does not conform to Uniform Code 2A. I tried being civil. Took a slice of pie over to her house and explained I was new to all this. She refused to open the screen door. Just stared through it like I was tracking mud on her soul. Things got worse after I mowed my field. I used my grandfather's old tractor, and it made a bit of dust. Karen called the county to report an environmental hazard. Then she started leaving notes on my porch, printed in size 24 font, in red ink, with phrases like "NON compliant" and "final warning." I still tried to ignore her. For the most part, I focused on my kids, my garden, and the little repairs around the ranch. Then came the idea for the barbecue party. My son, Ryan, was finally coming home. He had served in the Marines just like I had. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. So I wanted to make it special. I sent out invites to family, old neighbors, church friends, and some local veterans. We planned for a Saturday afternoon, games for the kids, cold drinks for the adults, and my award-winning ribs that had won the county fair 5 years in a row. We even built a stage out of hay bales for my cousin Jake, who sang country songs and played the guitar like a legend. It was supposed to be a homecoming, a day of love, laughter, and healing. But Karen had other plans. The day before the party, I received a letter shoved under my front door. It read, "Unapproved gathering detected. Cancel immediately or face enforcement. HOA Code 47-3B in effect." I laughed. Then I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. This wasn't some suburban backyard barbecue. This was my land, my home, my right. Saturday came. The weather was perfect. The grills were lit. Kids ran around with popsicles. Adults danced barefoot in the grass. Laughter echoed off the hills. And Ryan, my son, walked up the long dirt driveway in his uniform, smiling. I hugged him tight, couldn't stop the tears. For a moment all was perfect, until the drone appeared. Yeah. A drone, hovering right above the grill. I looked up and spotted Karen on the ridge, holding a remote control like it was a magic wand. She was filming us. I waved her off. She waved back, just one finger. 5 minutes later we heard the sirens. Then the helicopters. Then the police. That's how we ended up where we are now. Cops surrounding my property. Kids crying. Burgers burning. My son, freshly home from defending freedom, being questioned like a criminal. And now Karen, screaming for my arrest. But just when I thought it couldn't get worse, someone stepped forward from the crowd. Someone I hadn't seen in years. And what they said next shocked everyone. From the back of the crowd, a voice boomed out like thunder across a summer sky. Touch that man, and you'll have me to deal with. Every head turned. Even the officers paused. Out stepped a tall figure wearing a dusty leather jacket and cowboy boots. He had gray hair under a wide Stetson hat, and his eyes were sharp as broken glass. It was Sheriff Buckley, the same Sheriff Buckley who had retired 5 years ago. The same man who once saved this town during a flood by riding a canoe through Main Street, carrying people 2 at a time. I hadn't seen him since my grandfather's funeral. Karen's jaw fell open. Sheriff Buckley? You don't have jurisdiction anymore, she shrieked. He ignored her and strode right past the patrol cars. I may be retired, Karen, he said, loud enough for all to hear. But I still know the law, and I know when someone's abusing it. He walked over to me, clapped a hand on my shoulder. You all right, son? I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. Buckley turned to the officers. Now, which one of y'all got called out here for a man grilling burgers on his own land? One younger cop shifted awkwardly. We were told there was a dangerous fire hazard, sir. An unauthorized large-scale event. Buckley pointed to the well-watered grass, the fire extinguisher beside the grill, and the open field stretching in all directions. Does this look like a fire hazard to you? The officer shook his head. No, sir. Another officer chimed in. We were told there was a riot forming. Buckley raised an eyebrow. You mean the dance circle with toddlers? There were a few chuckles in the crowd. The tension began to ease a little. Karen marched forward, face red. This man is in violation of HOA code. This is an unapproved gathering. This ranch is under jurisdiction. That's where you're wrong, Buckley cut in. This ranch was established in 1902. It's a heritage homestead. Never signed into your HOA. You've got no authority here. Karen froze. That can't be. I have maps. Maps don't beat deeds, Buckley said. And I've seen the deed. I was the witness when the old man passed it down. Karen's eyes darted, panicked. But the bylaws say. Lady, Buckley said, stepping closer. Your bylaws don't trump state law. Now, I suggest you take your drone, your walkie-talkie, and your attitude and head on home before someone files a harassment complaint. People began to clap. A slow, growing applause that made Karen's face twitch like she was chewing a lemon. She turned and stormed off, shouting into her walkie-talkie, This isn't over. I'll have the county on you next. The officers began to back away, some even apologizing. The sirens stopped. The flashing lights dimmed. Ryan stepped up beside me. Dad, what the heck was that? I shook my head. That, son, was Texas HOA drama. And we just survived round 1. The rest of the party slowly came back to life. The music returned, the kids resumed their games, and I finally got back to my grill. Buckley stayed for a plate of ribs, told stories about my grandfather, and promised to keep an eye on that pink tornado. For a few days after that, things were peaceful again. People from the party kept stopping by to say how proud they were that I stood up for myself. Some even brought gifts, homemade pies, jars of jam, even a quilt someone stitched with Freedom Barbecue embroidered on it. But just when I thought we'd finally earned some rest, another letter showed up. This one was different. It wasn't red. It wasn't printed in angry bold font. It was in gold foil, with an official seal. Notice of Property Review, County Board of Land and Agriculture. Apparently, someone had reported my ranch for unauthorized livestock and unsafe building structures. And that's when things started to get ugly. A week later, while I was checking the chicken coop, I noticed something strange. My goats were gone. Vanished. The gate was open, latch cut clean through. I ran across the field, heart pounding. I found hoof prints leading down the back trail, then nothing. Just empty grass. I called the sheriff. Buckley showed up in 20 minutes, took one look at the cut latch and said, "This wasn't no accident." My youngest son, Mikey, came running up with his tablet. "Dad, someone posted pictures of our goats on Facebook." We gathered around the screen. There they were, my goats, at someone else's property, behind a brand new white fence. "Recognize that house?" Buckley asked. I did. It was Karen's cousin's place, 2 roads over. "Looks like the HOA just upped their game," Buckley muttered. I clenched my fists. This means war. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those goats behind that white fence, heard Karen's screechy voice shouting rules, and imagined her laughing about it all over tea and dry toast. She wanted a fight? Fine. But I wasn't going to throw punches. I was going to use facts, the law, and a whole lot of determination. The next morning, I drove straight to the county agriculture office with Buckley riding shotgun. The receptionist gave us a weird look when we walked in. Maybe because I was holding a folder an inch thick with documents, pictures of my goats since they were babies, their vet records, and even photos of their favorite snacks. They loved carrots more than life itself. A guy in a blazer came out. He introduced himself as Mr. Lawrence. "You're the one from the ranch? We've had complaints." I handed him the folder. "My livestock were stolen. Your complaint list probably came from the same person who called the cops on my barbecue." Buckley nodded behind me. "Karen Davis." Mr. Lawrence sighed. "Ah, her again. You know her. She calls every week. Last time she complained about someone's dog barking too loudly. Turned out it was her own dog echoing off her window." I nearly laughed, but I held it in. This wasn't the time for jokes. He flipped through my folder, eyes narrowing. "Well, you've clearly documented everything. If you're saying your goats were moved without permission, that's a criminal matter." "Good," I said, "because I want to press charges." Things moved quickly after that. Buckley called in a few favors. Animal control paid a visit to Karen's cousin's place. They scanned the goats' microchips, which I'd had implanted just in case of things like this. It was undeniable. Those were my goats. Karen's cousin tried to play dumb, saying they wandered over and he thought they were abandoned. But when they found bolt cutters in his garage and strands of my gate's rope tangled in his trash bin, the story fell apart. He was slapped with a hefty fine and a court date, and I got my goats back. But the damage was done. This wasn't just about livestock anymore. It was about principle. Back at the ranch, I tried to get things back to normal. Ryan helped me repair the coop. Mikey made welcome back signs for each goat. He named them after superheroes: Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and so on. We laughed that night around the fire pit, making s'mores, listening to country music on the radio. Even the dogs seemed to breathe easier. But peace never lasts long when Karen's involved. 1 week later, the next letter came. This one was typed in gold and embossed, sealed with something that looked like a notary stamp. Mandatory HOA meeting. Investigation into ranch compliance status. It was signed by the entire HOA board. Buckley looked it over and snorted. "What is this? A summons or a royal wedding invite?" Ryan frowned. "Do you have to go?" "I'm going," I said. "I want them to say it to my face." The meeting was held in the town community center. It was usually where we had bake-offs, quilt shows, and local theater performances. But that night it felt more like a courtroom. The room was packed. Karen sat at the front behind a long table, flanked by 3 board members in matching blue jackets. It looked like a bad sitcom cast. Everyone else, neighbors, reporters, even strangers, sat in metal folding chairs, waiting for the fireworks. Karen tapped the mic. We'll begin by addressing the violations committed by Mr. Luke Daniels. I stood up. Before we start, I want to make something clear. This land is part of my family's legacy. We built this town. That ranch is mine. I never signed anything. So unless you can prove otherwise, you have no power over me. Karen's lip curled. Well, that's what we're here to discuss. We believe you are within the boundary lines of HOA jurisdiction due to an overlooked land annexation filed in 2009. People gasped. I blinked. That's not possible. Karen grinned. It is. And if we're right, you'll be responsible for 16 years of unpaid dues, compliance fines, and violation fees. She pulled out a sheet, which totals $128,472.96. The crowd went silent. Ryan muttered, "This can't be real." Karen smiled wider, like a cat with a songbird in its teeth. "You've got 30 days, she said, or we take legal action, including potential seizure of property. I didn't speak, couldn't. I just stared at her. But then, out of nowhere, a man stood up at the back of the room. He was dressed in a dark suit, had thick glasses, and carried a briefcase. "I object," he said. Karen squinted. "Who are you?" The man walked down the aisle calmly and handed me a business card. It read, James Avery, attorney at law, property rights specialist. "I represent Mr. Daniels now," he said, "and I have proof that this so-called annexation is not only flawed, it's entirely fake." The crowd erupted. Karen slammed her palm on the table. "Order. This isn't a courtroom." James smirked. "No, but soon it will be. See you in court, Ms. Davis." I turned to him, stunned. "Where did you come from?" He smiled. "Let's just say you've got some powerful friends who don't like bullies." Karen stood up, red in the face. "This isn't over." James leaned in. "Oh, it just might be." As we walked out of that meeting hall, people clapped and cheered. Strangers patted me on the back. Some shouted, "We're with you, Luke." But back at the ranch, I found something waiting for me on the front porch. A box. No note. No name. Inside was a dead chicken. Mikey screamed. My wife nearly fainted. I covered it quickly and called the sheriff. Buckley arrived, jaw clenched. "They're escalating," he said. "This ain't just Karen anymore. Somebody's playing dirty." And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't just about a party or goats anymore. Someone wanted me off that land. Badly. And I was gonna find out who. We buried the chicken behind the barn. Mikey cried the whole time. He had named her Sunny. Said she laid the happiest eggs. I didn't have the heart to tell him she'd probably been poisoned. My wife, Emily, was furious. "This isn't just HOA drama anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "This is personal." She was right. The next morning, I installed security cameras all around the ranch. Motion sensors, floodlights, even a trail camera hidden in the trees out back. If anyone tried sneaking onto my land again, I'd catch them in the act. James, the lawyer, called with an update. "The annexation documents were doctored," he said. "Completely fabricated. Someone added your property onto an old HOA map after your grandfather died." "That's fraud," I said. "Exactly. And if we can prove who did it, they're going to face serious charges." I had my suspicions. Karen might be the face of the HOA, but she wasn't smart enough to pull off legal document fraud alone. Someone else was helping her. Later that day, I noticed a black SUV parked down the hill near the fence line. I grabbed my binoculars and spotted a man inside talking on the phone, pointing at my house. I drove down there fast, but by the time I got close, the SUV sped off, leaving a trail of dust behind. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the floorboards, every howl of the wind outside made me jump. I kept a flashlight by my bed and my boots by the door. 2 days later, we got a certified letter. Notice of eminent domain investigation, proposed development area 9B. I nearly dropped the envelope. Eminent domain? That meant the government or someone with influence was trying to claim my land for public use. But the attached plan was anything but public. It showed blueprints for a gated luxury community, clubhouse, golf course, shopping center, even a lake. And right in the middle of it all was my ranch. I drove straight to City Hall, stormed into the records department, and demanded answers. One of the clerks pulled up the file and winced. Yeah, this plan came from a developer called Blue Valley Horizons. They submitted it last year, but it was stalled because they couldn't get your land. And now? I asked. She looked uneasy. Now. It's moving forward again. Back at the ranch, I sat on the porch staring at the hills. My grandfather built this place with his bare hands. We planted those trees, raised those barns. It wasn't just land, it was legacy. Karen and her HOA cronies weren't just trying to control me. They were trying to erase my family. I had to act fast. That weekend, we hosted another gathering, but this time it wasn't a party. It was a rally. Neighbors, farmers, ranchers, veterans, church folk. Everyone came. People brought lawn chairs, signs that read "Hands off our land," and "Ranches over riches." James the lawyer gave a fiery speech. This isn't just about one man's ranch. This is about every landowner who's ever been bullied, silenced, or forced off their property. Even Buckley spoke. I've lived here my whole life, and I'll be darned if some HOA tells us when we can grill, dance, or live free. It was powerful, inspiring. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. But then, a fire broke out. The east side of my property, where the hay was stacked and the chicken coop stood, erupted in flames. People screamed. Kids cried. I ran toward the smoke with a fire extinguisher, but it was spreading fast. Someone called 911. Others formed a bucket line. We managed to stop it before it reached the barn. But the coop was gone. So were all the chickens. And that's when I found it. A gas can. Not one of mine. It had a sticker on it, faded but clear. Property of Blue Valley Horizons Construction. My heart pounded. I looked around at the ash and smoke, the shocked faces, the blackened grass. This wasn't just about pushing me out. This was sabotage. A neighbor ran up holding something in her hand. "Luke," she said breathlessly. "I found this in the ditch just beyond the fire." It was a phone, cracked, burnt around the edges, but still working. And when I opened the photo gallery, my stomach dropped. There were pictures of my land, my security cameras, screenshots of emails between Karen and someone named M. Delaney, the lead architect at Blue Valley Horizons. And then videos of someone pouring liquid around the coop. Face not clear. But the watch on their wrist? Bright pink. Karen's signature color. I looked at Buckley, who had just finished helping someone carry a wounded goat. "We've got proof now," I said. But just as I spoke those words, James came running up from the road, waving papers. "You need to see this," he shouted. I opened the envelope. It was a court order. They're forcing a temporary injunction on your land. You can't make any changes, hold events, or interfere with their inspection team. I stared at the paper, then at the burnt coop, the crowd of neighbors behind me, and my sons standing near the edge of the field, their faces full of fear. They were coming for everything, and the next move was mine. I didn't wait another second. The moment James handed me that court order, I knew we were out of time. The fire wasn't just a scare tactic, it was a message. A final warning. Karen and her developers were telling me, "Back off, or we'll burn it all." But they didn't realize something. I'd been in combat. I'd faced worse than threats and fake paperwork. And I didn't back down then, and I wasn't about to now. By noon the next day, my land was swarming. 3 black SUVs rolled up first, Blue Valley Horizons inspectors with shiny shoes and clipboards, snapping photos of burned soil like it was already theirs. Karen strutted behind them, pink suit freshly ironed, sunglasses low on her nose like she was the sheriff of the Wild West. But what she didn't know is that I'd already made my move. Early that morning, James filed a countermotion with the court, one that froze their injunction until further investigation. And that little phone found in the ditch? It had been placed into evidence. Even better, Buckley got a warrant approved for Karen's email records. So when Karen stepped onto my porch, lips curled into her signature smirk. I didn't flinch. You have until Friday to vacate, she said sweetly, handing me a new paper. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I opened my phone, tapped play on the video. Her smile vanished. The screen showed grainy footage, someone walking across my field with a gas can. Then a close-up, a gloved hand, and a bright pink watch. You were saying? I asked. Her jaw opened, closed, opened again. That's not. Just then, Buckley stepped up beside me. Karen Davis, you're under investigation for criminal trespass, arson, and fraud. Gasps erupted from the crowd gathering behind the inspectors. Karen laughed nervously. This is a mistake. I didn't do anything. James stepped forward with a smirk. We also have email exchanges between you and Mr. Delaney, showing you encouraged him to fake documents to seize this land. That's a felony, by the way. Karen spun to the inspectors. Say something. You know this land is part of the project. But they were already backing away. One of them pulled out a phone and mumbled. We were told everything was legal. Buckley stepped closer, cuffs in hand. Ma'am, turn around. No, Karen screeched. I am the HOA. You can't arrest me. But Buckley didn't even blink. In one smooth move, he clicked the handcuffs behind her back. The crowd burst into cheers. Neighbors clapped. Mikey jumped up and down, shouting, She's going to jail. She's going to jail. Ryan stood beside me with a grin so wide I thought his face might crack. Dad, you did it. But I shook my head. We did it. 2 days later, Blue Valley Horizons dropped all claims. Turns out, once the truth came out, their investors backed off like rats from a sinking ship. And Mr. Delaney? He was arrested too for bribery and fraud. With Karen gone, the HOA board crumbled. Turns out, most of them didn't even know what she'd been doing. One guy stepped down mid-meeting after realizing he'd signed off on fake maps. As for us, well, we rebuilt the chicken coop. Bigger this time. The whole community pitched in. Neighbors brought wood, nails, and even a few baby chicks to start fresh. The barbecue party returned too, bigger than ever. But this time, it wasn't just about my son coming home. It was about all of us coming together. Families brought casseroles, pies, and folding chairs. Veterans shared stories. Kids raced through the fields, flying kites and chasing goats named after superheroes. Buckley grilled ribs until his face was red. James played guitar on the porch. Even the mayor stopped by and promised to make sure this never happens again. As the sun set over the hills, I looked out at the land my grandfather loved and knew he'd be proud. Because we didn't just fight for dirt. We fought for freedom, for legacy, for the right to live in peace without someone barking rules over the fence. And we won. Mikey tugged at my sleeve. Dad. Yeah, buddy? Can we call it the Freedom Ranch now? I smiled. We already do.